Test, test, test. Testing, testing, test, test, test. Test, test, test. Testing, testing, test, test, test. Testing, test, test, test. Test Ickles, test Ickles, test, test, test Ickles, test Ickles. Welcome everyone to episode 706 of the Daily Mother Whoa, the most muscular Swolecast, Beardcast, Broadcast, Gaincast, and Mancast in the realm. Because when I flex, you flex, we all flex our biceps. Welcome everyone to the Gain Train. Welcome to Pumptown. Welcome to the Quad Nipplecast, the Chipplecast, the Quad Nips, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Welcome everywhere, wherever you are watching Papa Swole make sick fucking gains. Welcome to the show. Brooklyn, yeah, when you come in, holler where you're from. We had a huge international show yesterday. That was super fun to hear everyone where you're from. So where are you located? Where are you flexing? How about that? Where are you flexing right now? Because somewhere you're flexing. You exist somewhere in this world. Where are you flexing from? Houston, London, Brooklyn, Canada. Represent. Richard, Gina, what's going on? Facebook, and Brian on YouTube. So we're everywhere. People are coming in live. Those of you that are coming into Twitch, make sure you say hi, drop some thumbs, drop some biceps. That way I know you are large and in charge. So welcome everyone wherever you're watching the Mancast. Chester, Virginia. What up, fam? How we doing? On the rig in Arizona. Respect, man. Respect. Put in the OT, huh? Put in the OT. Actually, it's regular T. It's regular T right now. Bristol, Wisconsin. So I got on Eastern time. It's just before 4:00. And those of you that know, okay, we used to be at noon Eastern time every day, but now playing around with different times, trying to make sure that we're getting everyone in the world involved. And I think that's been a huge plus. I think that's been a huge plus because we're getting a lot of people from different areas of the world at all times. And remember, if you can't catch it live, you can always catch the replay on any of these sites. But also, fam, you can listen to the podcast on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. So you can get every episode there as well. So you can catch up to your audio gains in addition to watching it live or watching a live replay. So today's episode, I promised yesterday. Remember, I said, I know. I said yesterday we're going to talk about macros, and then we got, where the hell did yesterday's episode go? It fucking went, it went off the deep end. It went wide. Let's just say it went wide. Like the shot at the buzzer, it went wide. We went to OT, but it was just kind of like, we went off the deep end. Got inspired by other things, and we went that direction, which is fine. I know that's why you watch the live Swoles, because you get what you're going to get. You get the real deal. You get the straight shit. You get the straight stuff in your face. Boom, done, and it's over. And then you leave. You're like, what the hell just happened? What did I just listen to? Now, but yesterday we talked a little bit about everything revolving around fitness. We talked about a lot of different things yesterday. And today we're going to get into the nutrition a little bit more directly, like I promised. Oh man, why now? It's 70 degrees and my Harley is screaming at me. I'll catch up. That's what happens when you get stuck in the spring. You get those surprise beautiful days and the bike's not out, right? The bike's not up and ready to go. What up, Swole? What's up, Dale on Twitch? Yesterday, I agree, Gina. I think yesterday's episode was fantastic. I think it was a great episode. Yeah, fam, if you haven't checked out episode 705, I highly recommend it. It's titled, I believe, Everything About Fitness, or an episode about everything. It was a great little roundabout, and it put a lot of things into perspective. I got a lot of positive feedback from yesterday's episode. In addition to that, 704 was also a good one. So if you've been missing out this week, today's been some fire episodes. So let's just jump right into the nitty. Let's get right into the gritty. Let's just get right into what I wanted to talk about today with macros. So the title of the episode, Macro 101, Macros 101. It's literally going to be intro to macros, and we'll talk about macros. I'll field some questions, but this is going to be just giving you what you need to know about macros and what macronutrients are, and really the importance of macronutrients. Because what happens so commonly in the fitness industry is that things get blown out of proportion. All of a sudden, macros, and that word macros, most people don't even know that it stands for macronutrient. They just know the word macro because it's said so often. And people just say macros, 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 macros. It's seen at almost as like this larger than life thing, right? It's like almost a religious term in terms of fitness. You say macros and it's just something larger than it really is. And what I mean by that is the level of importance or the level of importance that each person should be putting on the actual term, and especially when it comes down to measuring macros and percentages and shit like that. So first off, most of you failed math or are terrible at math. So getting into your nutrition to start measuring shit is just a terrible approach. Most of you either hate math or you're terrible at it. So the first thing that we talk about in the fitness industry, like, oh, you're going to start getting in shape and start eating healthy, start measuring shit, start subtracting and adding and, calculating percentages. It's like the number one thing that we suck at and that we hate. Most people don't like math. Most people don't like calculating things. So that's why I'm very big on not counting. That's why I'm very big on not measuring and the proper approach to nutrition. So, what macros are, like I said before, it stands for macronutrients, and macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fat. So, they're really the macro meaning large. They are larger nutrients, but they provide caloric value. They provide energy from the body. So, your body can extract, convert, create, transfer, whatever term you want to use and whatever process. I'm not here to go over everything in biology and anatomy and exercise physiology, but your body can create energy. We can get muscle contraction, we can repair, we can do shit with protein, fat, and carbs. Those are the big ones. Those are the only ones. Those are the ones that we care about. The macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbs. Now, there are many different types of proteins, there are many different types of fats, and there are many different types of carbohydrates. And some of them are going to work differently. So when you have these different types of nutrients and you have all these subcategories, what people normally forget or are completely unaware of is that there are many different types of proteins. Some proteins are good, some proteins are bad, some proteins are complete, some proteins are not complete, some proteins are more useful, some proteins are not as useful. There are many different types, and most proteins have the suffix in, like albumin. That's why protein kind of has an in at the end. Like the suffix usually refers to a protein. Hemoglobin is a protein. And the same goes with sugar, usually ends in OSE, galactose, fructose, sucrose, sucralose. All those things are sugars, OSE at the end. And I'm sure there could be exceptions, but that's like what you learn like in medical terminology, that a lot of words and phrases have the same prefix or suffix as a way of categorizing them. And what we call and fats, there are many different types. There are saturated fats or unsaturated fats. So I'm not going to get into the details of all the different types of each macronutrient, like the subcategories, because those are all individual episodes, and that's a whole ton of content that we can kind of dig into in the future. But what happens is when you start getting real detailed, people get interested, right? All of you are going to get interested. You're like, oh, cool. What's the difference between saturated and unsaturated fats? Oh, I'm going to learn something. Like, I'm going to change my whole outlook on things. I'm going to learn something that's going to change the game. Well, yes and no. When it comes to nutrition, in my opinion, knowing more isn't always better. And I think we know way too much about nutrition in the sense that we get too granular and we focus too much on the details when it comes to our own eating. We come to our own approach, which is why my approach is more global, is more broad, is more basic, is more fundamental, is more about what you're eating rather than counting. Because I truly believe that if you are looking at the most important areas to hit your nutrition, like head on, the most important areas to focus on, if you're focusing on less areas and you're focused on less targets, you're going to hit more bullseyes, if that makes sense. If you're shooting at two targets, how often are you going to be accurate in both? First off, never. You can kind of get in the middle somewhere. Depends on how close those targets are, right? If you have two completely separate goals over here, you can't hit right in the middle. If your targets are kind of close together, you can almost maybe cover both of them if you focus right down the middle. But most of our goals and most of your goals are going to be different, right? You want to build muscle, but then you want to lose fat. So these are like two ends of the spectrum where you really have to go one direction first, focus on one, and then start focusing on another area. It's very hard to do both. And when it comes to nutrition and your macros, we get sent down these rabbit holes. We get sent down these rabbit holes of specific types of fats, specific types of carbs, specific types of proteins. And we start looking at the science too much when we're not fucking scientists. Like we are, but we're not. You have to be your own scientist, but we're not scientists by profession. So we start listening to these so-called experts, and some people know what they're talking about. Some people don't know what they're talking about. Some people pretend to know what they're talking about. Those are the real dangerous people. Those are the real dangerous people, the ones that have degrees, the ones that have all the things on paper that you want to see from a so-called expert, but then really don't know what they're talking about or are sending people down a path that might not be right for them, because you're going to get a lot of people that just believe you because of your board certification or your degree. And that can be very dangerous when you have responsibility to be giving at least unbiased information. And what I try to do is, this is my show. This is my show. I'm not sitting here quoting all these different fucking scientific articles. I'll have discussions about scientific articles. I just don't want to go sifting through scientific research. I'm fine with you sending me something and we can have objective conversations about it. But as you all know, and as we've talked about, one study does not prove a fact. Like, you need accumulation, you need a lot of different resources, you need a lot of objective perspectives, and you need a lot of different things to make something really a viable option or a viable truth as far as we know it. But these are my experiences and my opinions. So you're listening to this show and you're listening to this content, and I'm respectful of that. I respect the fact that I'm not sitting here saying this is the answer. And that's why I respect your attention. I respect where you're coming from. And I want your brain to be pliable. I want your brain to be like a sponge and understand that I'm not giving you gospel. I'm trying to rewire you a little bit in terms of how you approach all this information and how you approach logic. How you approach logic, because strangely enough, logic is illogical or common sense is not common. And the reason why common sense isn't common is because school teaches you their version of common sense. You're taught how to have common sense. You're not taught to think objectively. You're not taught to think for yourself in this system, in our world. You're taught to think how you should think or how the system thinks or wants you to think. So we don't really even have common sense. Like, look at the facts. You have to look at the facts and you have to really look at what you're feeling. You have to look at what your blood work is telling you. You have to look at what you feel good with. You have to look at what research shows and where that's coming from and who's doing that research. Like, there's a lot of objectivity and subjectivity that needs to be applied to all of this stuff. Just because you're a scientist doesn't mean that's the answer. Just because you're a professor from Harvard certainly doesn't mean that you are correct. Like, none of that fucking matters. It really doesn't. A personal training certification, a fitness expert, it doth not make you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but fitness certifications are a dime a dozen and they don't really go into too much depth. So just because you have a personal training certification or just because your trainer or someone that you know has a training certification, I hate to break it to you, but that ain't a lot of information in itself. Okay. I can pass most of these personal training certifications with my eyes closed underwater. It's just not that complicated. And that's why it's just like bartending. It's open season. Personal training is open season. Anyone could be a bartender. Do you need a bartending certification? No. Do they have them? Yeah. I mean, it teaches you stuff. But anyone that ever did bartending, you know that taking a class and learning how to make a drink is a lot different than literally tending a bar and dealing with customers and dealing with the the point of sale system and the computer and having 10 people waiting for a drink and multitasking and making sure everyone's satisfied and collecting and cleaning up and getting more ice and getting more cups ready and making sure that you're not running out of certain drinks. I mean, I say that because a lot of you have done bartending at some point in the past. So it's completely different. So learning how to do fitness from a book, learning how to be a personal trainer from a book is a lot different than spotting someone, than cueing someone, than correcting someone, than listening to their problems psychologically and figuring out where they're really having issues. And that comes back to the macros. I know that seemed like it's off topic, but it's not, because the right approach psychologically is going to be the right approach tactfully. And the right physical approach is going to be the right approach for your journey. It's going to be the right approach, period. So when we're discussing macronutrients, how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates, not the right time. Does it matter? Sure. Okay. It matters. They exist. They're going to have different effects on different people's bodies. That's not for debate. I'm not arguing the fact that changing up your amount of carbohydrates is going to make a difference. Of course, it does. Changing out the fatting content in your food is going to make a difference. Protein volume, it's all going to make a difference because they exist. If you're eating more protein, you're eating certain foods in more quantity. If you're eating more fat, you're eating certain foods in more quantity. That all makes a difference, but not so much of a, as a difference as what those foods are. If you're getting more fat because you're eating more Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, that's not going to be good for you. Okay. Obviously, the type of fat makes a difference and the sources are important. That is why my approach with macros is to not really pay too much attention to those until you figure out which foods you react best to. Then that's like a little bit higher up on the ladder. So, anyone that comes into here, when you hear me preaching, don't count calories, don't count macros. It's not that I'm saying you should never ever or that it's not a useful tool. It just means you shouldn't be doing that from the start. We're not good at counting. We're not good at measuring. Not to mention, you don't even know what the fuck you should be eating when you start with your diet or your nutrition plan, especially if you're buying something from someone, you're just buying a nutrition plan. That's why the elimination process is the best way to start because it teaches you to learn what's best for your body. Most people just don't want to try. So, to get back to the macros and to give you a little bit more insight into what those are, each macronutrient has an approximate amount of calories associated with it. This is not exact, this is an approximation. 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates and protein, and 9 calories per gram of fat. Now, that's an approximation. I believe it's actually 9.4 calories for fat and 4.1 for carbs and protein, I believe. But that's so it's an approximation. And usually and generally, that's just an amount of energy. And energy is hard to quantify. One of the laws of thermodynamics is energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So it can just be transferred in different ways. And it's converted into different types of energy, different types of mass and matter and molecules that store energy in different ways. Now, the key is your body's ability to extract that energy and convert those, I guess, fuel sources, fat, protein, and carbohydrates, into usable energy. So your body doesn't take carbohydrates and is like, this is full of energy, or this fat is full of energy. Yes and no. It takes those calories, it takes those actual molecules and puts them through different systems in the body, whether it's, beta oxidation or, fucking, what's it called? The stupid shit that everyone studies and no one remembers. You got the Krebs cycle. You have all these different types of ways your body oxidizes fat. And then you have the glycolytic system. And then you have the ways that the body breaks down glycogen and the way the body will generate ATP from fat, from glucose, and so forth. And there's many other factors that contribute to this, how quickly your body can get the fat into storage, how quickly your body can absorb the sugars. And that comes down to nutrient timing, what you're eating, fiber intake, and all those little details about nutrition. But the base factor is getting the right amount of nutrients in, getting the right amount of nutrients in with the associated micronutrients, which are often not looked at, and then branching out and then starting to get more tactical and maybe start getting a little bit more analytical with your ratios and with your numbers after you're determining which foods your body best absorbs and best digests. And that's what I discuss when I talk about where I refer to inflammation. So by going through the elimination process, you're figuring out which foods your body can actually absorb the best. When you figure out which foods your body can absorb the best, then you can start playing around with the ratios. how much you're consuming. How many calories are you consuming? I can't tell you how many people ask me how many calories they should be consuming to gain weight or to lose weight, and they don't even know how many calories they're consuming right now. How can I tell you or make any suggestions for you if you don't even know what you're doing now? Like, you have to understand what you're doing now in order to change it. If you don't know what you're doing now, how are you going to change anything? You're just going to try something else randomly and you don't have anything to compare it to. So it's very important that you are starting with an idea of what you're doing now. You have to know what you're doing now so you understand if you're actually increasing calories. If you just start eating 2,500 calories, you don't know if you're increasing from where you are now or decreasing. Like, start observing what you're doing now. Start documenting and start tracking what you're doing now. Start writing down how many calories should you be eating a day? Fuck if I know. Start writing down what you're doing. Are you gaining weight? Are you losing weight? How much protein are you actually consuming in a day? How much carbohydrates? What foods are you consuming? Are you consuming foods that are highly inflammatory? Is your body defending itself all the time? Is your body trying to go through into these protective mechanisms because it's fighting inflammation from the foods that you're eating every day? Once you get those things out of the way, once you realize what you're doing now and what foods you might have to eliminate and might have to cut out, then you can start down the line getting a little bit more granular and starting to look at the volume of the food and start to look at your macros. And maybe you need to cut back on the carbs a little bit to flush out some extra water. Maybe you don't need that many carbs, up the fat a little bit. Okay, you're getting too much protein, cut down the protein, increase the fats. Oh, you're doing a lot more strength training. You're looking to bulk up more, increase the carbohydrates, drop the protein a little bit, drop the carbs. Like, there's different ways you can seesaw this and different ways people have been successful. So anyone that hates on the ketogenic diet, why? Anyone that hates on the vegan diet, why? I mean, these are all just different methods, but it still comes down to what foods you should be consuming. So it doesn't matter if you're a vegan or a carnivore or keto or paleo. It doesn't matter what your philosophies are and your nutrition approach as like a moral human being. What foods are you consuming? Are those foods bad for you? Are you allergic to beans and having trouble digesting beans and you're a vegan and just pounding beans and grains all day long? Like, do you really think that's how a human body is supposed to eat? Maybe your body isn't really reacting too well for you. You might feel like you've dropped some weight, sure, but if you drop any level of carbohydrates and inflammatory food, you're going to shed some water. Like, you're dropping a lot of processed foods. I mean, that's why a lot of people see progress when they start like a ketogenic diet or a vegan diet. You drop weight because you're losing water and you're oftentimes cutting down a lot of calories from the shit that you were eating before. So any kind of consistent diet a lot of times sees initial progress because it's a change. But there's a lot of things that happen after the dust settles and after that new reaction settles. All of a sudden people start seeing the true colors and you might not like it. You might not like it. Let's see. Dairy and beans take a hit on my body. Took me a while to get to that point now. Uh, let's see. I've counted calories for a long time, but after starting the elimination diet and changing what I eat, I can see how counting calories isn't that important when you're eating only healthy foods. If you find the foods that are right for you, you'll find that counting your calories is going to be a lot less important. Doesn't mean that you can't see benefits or you can't see added benefits or you can't take it to the next level and start analyzing your caloric intake a little bit more. That doesn't mean you can't do that. It just means that you're not going to need to keep a microscope so much on like weighing every last thing. When you're eating the right foods for your body, you're getting the micronutrients, you're getting the macronutrients, you're getting all the supporting, molecules and things that your body needs, then you're more satisfied. Then you're going to have less hunger pains. You're drinking plenty of water. You're going to have more hydration. You're going to feel less hunger pains as an effect of being thirsty. So you're not going to be snacking so much because you're actually properly hydrated when it turns out you're actually thirsty and dying of thirst when you thought you were hungry. So instead of snacking, you're drinking water. So you're eating less calories. So hydrating is a huge thing to lose weight because most of you are just dehydrated. And when you drink more water and you feel better and you're not as hungry because you're actually thirsty, you're not getting as many calories because you're not stuffing your face mindlessly with food that you don't need. I've just started following you and I love your no bullshit approach. You're my fitness fucking guru. Thanks, fam. I appreciate it. Whey Gold or Gainer, neither. You don't need those protein supplements. And that's one of the biggest scams is how much protein everyone says you need. You don't need that much protein. You don't need a gram per pound of body weight. Like all that stuff is just fucking ludicrous. It's ludicrous because a gram per pound of body weight, first off, not everything in your body is muscle. So even if you're using that logic, if you weigh 200 pounds, you're not 200 pounds of muscle. You have fat, you have bone, you have organs. Like you have a lot of things that don't require protein like consumed. You don't need that much. So that whole gram per pound of body weight is just extremely blown out of proportion. That's like bro science at its finest or worst, however you want to look at it. But any kind of those powdered supplements, you don't need those things. You need more food. You need real food. If I'm cutting, how much of a caloric deficit should I be at? If you've never done an elimination diet, you should do that first before you're worried about cutting calories. And I mentioned that yesterday, I believe, or the day before, that if you're cutting calories and you don't know if you're eating the right foods, you're cutting calories and you're eating less foods with restricted nutrients. So you're getting less foods and you're still falling short of nutrients. So if you're not getting the right foods in and then you're still restricting calories, you're going to be nutrient deficient. So that's a concern. But if everything is perfect, you really only need to cut maybe a couple hundred calories. You don't need anything drastic because then your body will start having, releasing more stress hormones and cortisol, and you start retaining water and fat because your body thinks it's starving. So you really don't want to cut too much more than like a couple hundred, like 3 to 500 a day, maybe. Especially when you're doing, stuff like, especially when you're doing it naturally. When you're trying to do it naturally and maintain muscle mass, if you cut too many calories, you're gonna just get flat, you're gonna get exhausted. Can I find that? Can I find that on Google? You can find anything on Google. You can watch open heart surgeries on Google. I'm not sure what you're asking for. I just said a lot of things over the past 27 minutes, so I'm not sure what you're referring to finding on Google. But yeah, you can find anything on Google. Best way to lean down diets, vegan. I think a lot of you have to go back and watch the beginning of this episode. If you're just joining now and you're just jumping in asking random questions, because some of these feel like if you've been watching, you haven't been listening. But to lean down on diets, honestly, one of the easiest ways and the reason why a lot of these crash diets work is to cut down on carbohydrates because water goes with carbs. So the reason why a low carb diet works and keto works really well at the first week or two, people are like, wow, I lost so much weight. I lost 10 pounds the first week doing keto. Yeah, you lost like 10 pounds of water because when you cut carbs, your body flushes out extra water. But that's another reason why you also start getting flat and why keto is not ideal for building muscle. It's good for leaning down or trimming down, like doing a more high fat, lower carbohydrate. But if you're trying to lean out a little bit, just up the fat a little bit and drop the carbs in general. Yeah, and when you do keto, of course, you're dropping carbs, you're not eating processed sugars, and that's one of the easy pulls. That's one of the easy pulls for a lot of these nutrition plans like paleo or vegan or keto is that you're cutting out a lot of the processed shit just by doing the diet. So it's like, wow, this worked. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, it worked because you did A, B, and C. With all three of those approaches, you're really cutting out most of the crap that people eat on in any respect. So the vast majority of the population, if they went vegan, if they went paleo, if they went keto with exercise, most people will lose weight. Most people will lean out. Most people will see results. Like, don't underestimate the effect and the power of actually getting off your fat ass and being active and not eating shit. It's like, oh, well, I'm not eating shit foods anymore and I'm exercising. Wow, this nutrition plan worked. It really worked. This exercise program is amazing. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, a lot of them will work. A lot of them will work. If you're doing something now consistently, as opposed to your entire life of not doing anything of any value health wise, you're going to see a lot of change almost pulling shit out of a hat. Almost any exercise program and consistent nutritional approach will get you results from a zero starting point. Some of those will ramp off very quickly. Some of those will get you injured. I mean, there's a lot of risk for just doing a random fitness program or a random nutrition plan. Like, really, I mean, there's risk. I'm not just saying just do anything, but it's true because a lot of you watching are members of my Swolenormous X website. A lot of you are members of my community with all my programs and with the elimination diet and that approach and the workshops and the instructional videos and the yoga classes. A lot of you are doing that. And of course, it's mine, but I created it a certain way so it would be the foundational approach and it will be safe and it'll be able to be continued over a lifetime. And effective. It's effective and it maximally reduces the risk of injury. It gives you the proper foundation for your fitness. So that works. Of course it does. It's a structured program, but it's also, I mean, I also put in a ton of time to make sure that it was safe and maximally effective. But it's also going to keep you consistent and it will get results. You know, from zero to that, tons of results. From zero to something else that'll keep you consistent, it could give you results. You know, every different program or different thing that you approach is going to vary in its effectiveness. But if you're doing absolutely jack shit right now, it's like fucking do something. Fucking do something. And when it comes to macros, really all you need to know is that macros are those three nutrients that give you fat, protein, and carbohydrates. You're not a fucking scientist. If you looked at each one under a microscope, you wouldn't know the difference. You don't know the fucking difference. Trust me. It's just little carbon molecules structured in different ways. Like they don't fucking mean anything. What it comes down to is what should a human being put in their body? What should you as a human being, as an organism, what should you chew? What should be in your stomach? And how well is it absorbing? How do you feel? How do you perform? What does your blood work show? As far as we know, what's the most important things to show in the blood work? You know, you have to be very careful about what you look at in terms of cholesterol numbers, you know, and all this different stuff that's pushed by the American Heart Association. Like we were laughing the other day, and a lot of you see this often. We're laughing like the other day. I shared a picture that a friend of mine posted online, and it was from the Cleveland Clinic, and he posted a picture showing that the American Heart Association was raising money by selling Krispy Kreme donuts. And you see this everywhere. And I'm sure a lot of you see this all the time. I posted this in my premium group. It was literally a poster that he showed because he was at the Cleveland Clinic, and he showed a poster that was sponsored by the American Heart Association, and they were selling boxes of Krispy Kreme donuts to raise money for the American Heart Association. Like how ass fucked backwards inside out is everything. There's just so much money and so much circle jerking and ass fingering under the table. It's lost, fam. It's absolutely gone. And I'm not saying that you should not listen to your doctors. I'm not trying to be, you know, liable here, but you really have to take what a human being that has a coat on, that went to school and is educated by this whole fucking poisonous system, you really need to take what they say with some fucking salt. Literally, because salt is not bad for you, ironically enough. Okay. So fuck. So fuck. I'm literally saying you're a human being. Like you're able to make your own decisions. Just because someone that says you call them doctor, like doesn't mean that they have all the answers and that they're automatically right. We just depend. We're like, oh, take this. Okay. Suck this down. Okay. I'll do this. Okay. They do blood work. They have the tests, but you get to see your numbers and you can make these fucking decisions for yourself. And a lot of these nutrition plans, okay, you can say what you want about vegan, carnivore, paleo, keto, whatever it is. Most of the time, if you're exercising and you're reducing stress in your life and you're happy and you are eating healthy, you're eating a breadth of nutrients, whether it's you're eating, you know, grass-fed beef, but you're eating, you know, vegetables and fruits, and like you're eating quality foods, you're going to be fucking fine. Like what, all of a sudden you're going to live to be 40? Like you're still going to live. You're going to be healthier longer than most people. Just with the exercise itself, nutrition's so important, but the exercise is important too. Like using your body, like what your body is designed for, the muscles. I'm sorry, but the muscles are not designed just to sit around. Muscles are designed to contract and move your body. So if you're moving your body, oh, you're using your body for what it's designed for. Like think about a car. You can drive a car conservatively all the time. You're using the car for what it's for. Nothing's going to get gummed up. You got to change the oil. You got to change the tires. Got to get some little maintenance as it gets older. You're going to have to maybe, replace some bigger things, replace the spark plugs. You're going to have to replace the shocks eventually, but you don't have to replace them after 3,000 miles. You maintain the oil, you rotate the tires, you do the general maintenance. And then every once in a while, you might have something more major if you take good care of it. Your body's the same way. You're not going to have major repairs unless you let it go. Unless you never change your fucking oil, you don't have to get a new engine, right? If you do yoga and you do your strength training and you recover properly and you eat healthy, chances are you're not going to need a hip replacement. Chances are you're not going to need major back surgery. Chances are you're not going to need major shoulder reconstructive surgery. Chances are you're not going to need major blah, 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 blah. But if you neglect everything and you don't eat properly, you put absolute fucking shit in your system, you gum it up, you eat tons of crap and junk food and sugar and soda, you're going to fuck up the engine. You're going to have diabetes. You're going to have heart disease. You're going to have fucking liver disease. You're going to have all these problems because you're not maintaining yourself properly. You're not changing your oil. You're not giving yourself the right fuel. So fuel yourself properly, do all those things properly, and fucking hell, fam, if you do the small things properly, there's no guarantee that you won't get into a car accident, using the car analogy, and you still might need a hip replacement. Like, I might, if something hits me, if a fucking bald eagle, that's right. Only Papa Swole gets hurt by a bald eagle comes out of the sky and just pummels my gluteus medius, just bam, and just blows my hip out. I might need to have surgery. That bald eagle's gonna be fucking dead, but died so we can live. And that's what freedom's all about. Just end, boom, mic drop. Everyone's like, what the fuck just happened? No. So even if you take care of yourself, shit happens. It's life. But you got to put yourself in the best position to win, right? That's the rant. That's the real rant. I think it's that simple. I think it's that simple. You just got to take care of yourself. How many of you are changing your oil regularly? How many of you are taking care of your bodies the way you would take care of your car? How many of you are giving yourself the right fuel every day? How many of you are trying to figure out what fuel's best for you? Maybe you run better on more carbohydrates. Maybe you run better. Maybe you don't run so well on grass-fed beef. Maybe you run amazing on vegan and taking a supplement and you feel amazing. You fucking love the lifestyle. You love it. Maybe that's better for you. I don't think that's naturally how a human being should eat. I don't think that's on an evolutionary level. I don't think that's the way a human being should consume. It doesn't make sense logically. Doesn't mean that it's going to make you sick and die. Some people love it and some people try it and then they can't stick with it for whatever reason, or they don't feel well, or I'm sure there's a lot to do with blood type, genetics. There's a lot of stuff that we haven't connected the dots with yet. And big surprise, can you imagine trying to test that shit? Can you imagine trying to test or have studies on that? Let's get a group of people, and to make sure, and for it to be a valid study, you have to get a certain amount of people with the same genetic profile to eat a certain way and live a specific way over not just like a month, but like an extended period of time. Like, how would you even test that? Like, how would you even test that? Not to mention, we don't even know about the genetics yet. Like, we don't even, like, this is how much we know. This is how much we know. I'm sure of it. I'm sure in the next like 10, 20, or 50 years, we're going to have like the genetic profile and we're going to know that when your baby is born, or you can go and get a test and it'll be like, oh, you're in, you're a GT155C, which means you should be consuming, a vegan diet, or you are more predisposed for having benefits with a carnivorous diet because you're a GTX119B, and then there could be certain genes that get turned on or certain cancers that don't get activated because you're eating foods that your genetic profile. I don't know. I don't know, but that's the kind of stuff that's going to come out. And we don't know that shit yet. Like, really, the genetics are what's going to play the biggest role, I think. Like, why can some people smoke cigarettes their entire life and never get lung cancer, and some people never smoke and get lung cancer? Why do some people, uh, are you know, they are vegan and they feel amazing and they have muscle tone, this, that, and the other, and they're successful and they're, blah, blah, blah. You know how vegans are, got to tell the world, got to put in your Instagram profile. If you're a vegan, got to announce it, got to have it somewhere publicly. um, and then you have other people that say, like, my hair was thinning, I was exhausted, I was drained, I looked sickly. Like, what are the differences between those two people? Did one person completely butcher the vegan diet, or was it just really not right for them, like on a genetic level? Those are the questions that I think we'll find out. And that's the common sense of it. And that's where the elimination diet really thrives, is that it puts the power into your hands. It gives you the gavel, so to speak, and it gives you the ability to determine a lot of this stuff on your own, free of charge. You just have to go through it and make sure you're strict about it and analyze. And that's where, and that's where the real secret is. That's where the beauty is. And honestly, talk about the frontier, right? The brain and genetics, like how we really the more I talk to everyone and all the successes I hear some people have on certain diets, and then some people that have no success and they're miserable on it. Like, what's really the answer there? What's really the answer? Are we that different? Like, we are, but where are the differences? Not the arms and legs. It's the genes. It's the genetics. That's what those little tiny pieces of code that we're still figuring out what the fuck they do. Like, that's new. That's new shit, team. That's new shit. Like, what we're learning about genetics and epigenetics and which types of foods and chemicals can turn on receptors. Like, I don't know how much you all know about epigenetics, but there are certain foods and certain triggers and certain environmental factors that literally activate sequences of your gene coding and will start them from firing and start like production of certain cancers or cells. And like, we're still learning how that works. And you can imagine how expensive those tests are and how many studies they have to run. And do you really think do you really think that the priority for these expensive studies is going to be diets and proper eating and food? I mean, all the money, where's all the money? Pharmaceuticals and food companies. I don't think there's going to be a lot of money going that direction for a while. It's going to be resisted a long time because it could cost a lot of these companies a lot of money in reformulating products or changing their marketing campaigns or their ingredients and all that stuff. So, where's the money? It's the government, it's the pharmaceutical companies, it's the food companies, it's all these, the chemical companies, it's all these companies that have the money to run these tests. So really, like, the last thing they're gonna try to do is help everyone's health when their businesses depend on people being fucking sick. So there's a lot of issues with where you get your information and who's telling you information and who's teaching your doctors what they know. So think about that. Your doctor, and I'll leave you with this, and this is not to bash doctors or the medical community. There's a lot of people that are really open-minded that do a lot of good work. But next time you think about your medical professional that has been in the industry for 40 years, they've been practicing medicine for 30 years. Okay, that means they graduated, let's say in the late 80s or early 90s, right? They're practicing for 30 years, so like 80s or 90s. That means that their professors were 30 or 40 years old and practicing for 30 or 40 years, which means they've been practicing or they went to school in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s. So their instructors in their medical schools and the doctors that they were being taught by were doctors that learned in the 30s, 40s, and the 50s. Those doctors were taught in schools by doctors that went to school in the 1880s, the 1890s, the 1900s, like before World War One, like 1910. Like, you don't go back that far. You're not going back that far to like start to get to some of these like older professors and it starts kind of getting a little bit like, who's teaching who what? Like, oh shit. You start thinking about it that way. And people get very programmed. And human beings get very defensive over their beliefs. As we know from religion and politics, people get very defensive and angry. And instead of being open minded and being like, oh, yeah, well, maybe that's a good option, or maybe, yeah, maybe that's correct. Maybe that's the proper way to do it. They get defensive and they get more adamant and more violent and more fervent about their old school archaic opinions because really it's an opinion until we prove something otherwise. So I'm not even claiming to know everything. I try things. There's a lot of logic in how I approach my food. I go by how I feel, my results. When I'm eating a certain way and I look in the gym and I'm like fucking pumped and I feel full and I feel like energized and thick and I'm recovering well, who's to say that that's wrong? Like, I'm not taking anything exogenous. I'm not taking supplements. I'm not taking steroids. I'm not taking, so it's like, it's the food. It goes on my sleep. It goes on my mental state. It goes on my nutrition. And I'm experimenting just like all of you. So I'm giving you my best advice from my best experiences. And I'm trying to lead you towards where you can figure out this information for yourself and where you can invest your time and your energy best so you can get the best jump start. And that's where all of my content here for the Daily Swole, that's where everything from my Swolenormous X platform comes into play and my nutrition workshop and everything. It comes from this place of you have the power to figure this stuff out. You have the power to determine these outcomes and be in control of a lot of your life. Like, you're in control of it. You don't have to take any medication you don't want to. You don't have to do any exercise or workout or eat any food you don't want to. You have choice. That does not mean go into things blindly. It just means you need to start taking responsibility and understanding that you have the ability to follow your path and to determine things for yourself. You're not a slave to the system. You're not a slave. Google is amazing. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of things to think about. Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food. Indeed. Indeed, Hippocrates. Vince Mojak on Facebook. My old boss used to say, "Why work out? I'll just get run over by a bus if I did." Oh yeah, how does that baby feel you're carrying your belly for 30 years? I love that. It's like, why should I work out? I could get hit by a bus and die tomorrow. Yeah, you could, but how often does that happen? Chances are you're not going to get hit by a bus and you're going to be fat and unhealthy and you're going to die of heart disease. So those are people that are lazy trying to make an excuse. You can make it like anytime right now. Like right now, I'm going to go get my pump on. There's a thousand things that I need to do that I could say, okay, I can't work out today. I need to do this. I can't work out today. I need to put this up or do this video or this content. There's a lot of stuff that I need to do. A lot of things I need to take care of behind the scenes, but I'm still going to go do it. Going to get it done. No fucking excuses. And that's that. And that's that. So are you making excuses? Or are you taking action? And that's a little bit about macros, a little bit about nutrition. We talked about the macros a little bit. Literally, like this episode was no joke. Macros 101, just talking about the basics, what macros are, why they're not the be all end all. So a little more coding. We'll go into some deeper episodes. I'll talk more about fats. We'll talk more about all these different subcategories, over the course of next episodes. But this is also a lot of the content. If you're interested in more nutrition content, kind of like today, if you have not yet checked out the Stop Counting Calories workshop, the anti-diet workshop, that link is in my Instagram bio and also in the descriptions on Facebook and YouTube. So check that out if it's your first time listener. Also, if you are new to the show and you have not yet caught an episode, if it's your first time live, what's up, fam? Those of you that are watching, remember every day live on Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And every episode you can catch on SoundCloud and Apple Podcast. Um, Make sure you're following me everywhere. Turn on your post notifications so you know when I go live. It's a treat. Catching Papa Swole live is a treat. So I enjoy the fact that you got to be ready. You got to have your notifications on. And that makes it a little bit more fun. Plus, it gets to hit some different time zones. So I appreciate the fact that everyone's gotten their notifications on and plug it into El Papa Swole when we go live. And for additional training content, additional, vlogs and things of that nature, make sure you follow me on YouTube at Swolenormous. So I'm everywhere: Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. Follow Papa Swole everywhere at Swolenormous. And I'll see everyone else in Swolenormous X. Got a new workshop on the deadlift that I will be posting today. And I'll get the new virtual trainer up and a new yoga class this week. So some other things coming for those of you that are in Swolenormous X and anyone else interested in checking out my private community. More information on that, swolenormousx.com. So good Thursday. Gonna smash some legs today. I was gonna do some upper body. I'll do it tomorrow. Always like to focus on the legs more. So I'm a little bit sore, a little tight, but I'm gonna loosen up, bang out some legs. Oh, 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 oh. And yeah, tomorrow will be 707. So thank you. Thank you for the biceps, Dale. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for watching, following, enjoying episode 706. I'll see you tomorrow for 707, and I'll see everyone in Swolenormous X. So peace, Magees fam. A deuce, Magoose. Papa Swolio. Lates McGates. Later, Facebook. Later, YouTube. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out. Peace out.